Welcome back to Undulations. This is my third video about the Volca Modular. And before we get into some new stuff, I want to talk about something that I said in the last video. We talked about using this second function module, the rightmost function module, as a low frequency oscillator. So it's basically a self-triggering envelope that you can tap off of to modulate certain parameters around the device, or you can even take it up to high enough frequencies by shrinking the envelope time, and it's a thing that you can hear. So it's an audio frequency LFO. That's what we're listening to right now. And what I said in the last video was that when you turn the time knob all the way down, that was the highest pitch that you could get out of it. But in the last couple of days, I figured out that that is not the limit of it, okay? That's the limit of the knob, but you can actually route a negative voltage from the utility module, so that's using the A minus B times C, and you can send that to the time input on the second function module. And so instead of being limited at that point, I can actually take the frequency way higher, okay? So that's important, not just because you might use this as an audio source, but because instead of listening to that directly, you might use it as a source of modulation on another audio source. So now, if I had it in regular LFO mode, you can get some cool sounds with it as it is, and now with this extra juice coming from the utility module, man, you can get some nice sounds out of that. So I think that's a really nice addition to the things you can do with the Volca Modular. A lot of different ways that you can apply that. Now, what I'm going to talk about in this video is not just the Volca Modular, but how that you can take this device and pair it, use it with other devices, and get a lot more out of it. So it's a great way to take this and make it have a lot of different sounds and a lot of different musical capabilities. So we're going to start looking at some other gear. All right, let's dive in. So we're going to start connecting the Volca Modular to other devices, and the first thing to realize is that there's no MIDI port on it, so we won't be going the MIDI route. Instead, we'll be talking about control voltage, and conveniently there's a CV in port right up here on the device, and so you can put a stereo cable into that. And then if you have a Y cable like this, where it's stereo on one side and then two mono plugs on the other side, you're going to be able to get two CV signals. Now, a good example of what you might use would be this Arturia BeatStep. There is a pitch CV and a gate CV on the side here, and that's going to let you play either on the pads or through a sequence a series of gated notes that come through the cable, and then you can tap off of those and send those signals to the pitch input, and then, for example, send the gate signal to an envelope. And so the BeatStep, this is not the BeatStep Pro, which is more expensive. The BeatStep is around $100, and you can probably, since the newer model has come out, you could probably find them used pretty easily as well. It's a fun tactile thing to play with. It's good for setting up sequences like you just saw. And I also want to point out another cool thing about the BeatStep, which is that this enables you to take a signal from your computer through the USB and then have that come out through the CV and use that on the device. Even though I said we weren't going to be doing MIDI, you can certainly take it into a device like this and then have it convert to CV and go into the Volca Modular. Now, another similar thing is the Arturia KeyStep. And you know, if you are maybe a keyboard person and into trying to do a little bit more along that line with the Volca Modular, I think this is a great choice. It's somewhere around 120 bucks. It's able to do the same sort of hookup to the DAW like I was talking about for the BeatStep. It's also got the CV out for note and for gate. But with the KeyStep, this is where it starts to sort of get interesting and problematic. You've got a third CV output on here, and that's for the mod strip over here. So ideally you'd be able to play with pitch and gate data and then use this mod strip to be able to control some parameter on the Volca Modular. We've only got the two access points here, and that would be a part of this device that you would not be able to use as such. Now, the same holds true for something like the Korg SQ-1. This is again another fun sequencer to play. I had a clip on Instagram that I'll play right now. There's a lot going on that you can do with this in terms of playing with the sequences and setting them up, but it's also got multiple CV outs. And so it'd be nice to be able to take advantage of that, where that you have basically a couple of different threads of things going on the Volca Modular. But how to get from that 3.5 millimeter patch cable to the pin cable is an issue. Now, if you're DIY inclined, then you know, I've got a thing here. This is just sort of sitting around. I could plug two CVs from, say, the SQ-1 into here and then tap off of the pin cables over here. So you can imagine just making some sort of box that's got a bunch of places for 3.5 patch cables and then a bunch of pin cables that come out, or a breadboard or something like that. So that would allow you to even use something like, say, the Arturia Microbrute more effectively, where it's got pitch CV, gate CV, and yet it's also got an LFO and an envelope CV as well. And so if we think about that context where we get to more complex devices and they've got more CV outs than we can take in on the Volca Modular, they've got CVNs that we have no real means to deal with. And so with that in mind, I want you to think about the Kastle 1.5 from Bastl Instruments. This is a digital synthesizer that I did a video on a while back, and It's battery powered, it can also be USB powered, and it's got a lot of different sounds, different voices, some that are kind of actually similar to the Volca Modular because they're both FM synthesis based. But the main thing to notice is that the Kastle is also based on using pin cables to patch with. We're going to be able to take out signals from it and send them into the Volca Modular, and out signals from the Volca Modular and send them into the Kastle. And so this gives us a ton of interplay between these two devices. And this is sort of the realization of modular synthesis, where that we're not going to really have to think of it as two separate entities. This kind of becomes one unified device. And then I'll just point out that one thing that you kind of get immediately from the Kastle is it's got an I/O port that is connected to some pin cable sockets. And so that means that I can plug this into the mod CV jack on my KeyStep and then immediately tap that into the Volca Modular. And so the next thing I want to do is just demonstrate a simple patch with these two devices hooked up together that shows how the gates on the Volca Modular can be used to control the sounds coming out of the Kastle. And then after that, I decided that I would just show a bunch of clips of patches that I've put together using both of these. And I'm not going to go through the patching in detail, but I'm going to include how they were done in the description. So a few general setup things that I want to talk about before we go into this patch. First thing, I'm using the Bastl Dude mixer, and I've found this to be an invaluable device for being able to get the different voices and stuff out of the synthesizers and off into an audio signal that's mixed together. You can certainly do a lot of things without it. There's a lot of onboard mixing with the Volca Modular, but I do really suggest that you think about this. Another important thing is that grounding for control voltage stuff is an issue, and so basically the Kastle and the Volca Modular need to share a common ground, and that turns out to be easy to do if, for example, you hook the Kastle's I/O port to the CV in on the Volca Modular, or simply by having both devices plugged into ports on the Dude mixer. That achieves it also. So that is straightforward to do and very important, because otherwise basically the two synths are speaking a different language. And then last thing, I've got an attenuator here. It's basically just a little inline potentiometer, because I find that the output on the Kastle for audio is a little bit hot, so it gives me a little more control over it. So I've tried to pick a patch that's instructive. What you're hearing right now is basically just the Kastle on its own. Nice thrumming sound from the triangle LFO. The Kastle's got square LFO, stepped LFO, reset on that, and also some arpeggio type sounds from the formant synthesis. So it's not to say that this is purely a tone generator, but the Volca can provide a lot of structure from the sequence. So I'm going to send note data over to the Kastle. We'll get that in a second. And then the other thing that I feel like the Kastle lacks is that while you have audio out and you've got direct out from two of the oscillators, I don't know really any way that you process sound on the Kastle. And so what I'm going to do with that in mind is take the audio out, send it in through the CV in, process that through the low pass gate, and then take that back out through the I/O port and into the mixer. And that's sort of a round robin that you might not normally do, but I just wanted to make sure that I showed that you could send audio both ways. And then I'm also sending CV in sort of a similar type of ring for the LFOs, where the square LFO is triggering the second function envelope over here, and then the trigger output from that is resetting the LFO on the Kastle. So that's going in sort of a circulating loop. And so we're doing notes, timing, and some sound processing through the low pass gate. And I'm gonna go ahead and pull the plug on the sound for a second, just holding that open with the utility module. And so I'm putting it into the plus on function 1, and I'm gonna start the sequence. And so you can hear the note information there. And then now, as I start to change the setting on the low pass gate, you'll start to hear the sequence a lot more distinctly. And then there's also some nice effects that you can get by changing the LFO setting, the time setting on the modular. Sort of a stutter effect, or kind of almost a delay. I think that's really nice. And then I've got it set up to where I'm just going to add in the voice of the Volca Modular. And so I hope this gives you an idea of what I'm talking about, where I really think that it's best to view these two devices together as one sort of whole thing. And with that in mind, I've enjoyed making the patches for this combo, and I'm going to show some of them now. And again, the details on those will be in the video description. All right, I'll come back after the clips run. sounds and patterns and things like that, where why do you have to block the light? Get over here. Okay, that's better. Where like right now we're listening to hello. Alright, I hope everybody enjoyed listening to those patches. I feel like the Volca Modular and the Kastle 1.5 work really well together, and a lot of that comes from the pin cable compatibility that they have. You're able to just send CD signals, audio signals back and forth. I feel like there's a lot of potential there for soundscape design and for making music. So this has been the third video on the Volca Modular, and I think that's probably enough for now. I like the device a lot and I plan on coming back to it. So if this is your thing, make sure to subscribe. But before we go, I've been doing all these videos without any post-processing or effects. And what I want to do to close this one out is I'm going to run the Volca Modular through this, which is the Transmisser pedal from Earthquaker Devices. It's a very nice reverb, and I think that you can see that if you take this signal and process it with some other things like guitar pedals or such, that it opens up a whole new world of possibilities. So thanks a lot for watching.